Greetings, Lion McKeegan. Today's video, I will be giving you tips on rapier tips. Basically, how I keep a tip on a blade for long term, how I put the blade on, the material used, and where I get the tips from now. So stick with me and we'll get to it. So I have all the material here. First off, I have the new 3D printed rapier tips from Castile Armory. This particular tip is batch 1 and it has the Castile logo on the front of it. The newer tips will have on the front of the tip 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll explain that a little later. These tips slip right on the end of the most Castile rapiers. They're 3D printed, and when they're done that way, they have a metal disc, not a washer, that is placed in the very front of the tip. I'll be doing a review later on these tips. I've actually become quite a big fan of these tips. The next thing I have is one of the more important things other than the tip. This is 3/4 inch marine grade heat shrink, and it has an adhesive lining in the center of it. It's lined with it in the center. I've cut this into about a 2-inch length. I found that 2 inches seems to do pretty good as far as what I need to do for these tips. I have cloth tape. Cloth tape is what we're switching to for rapier tips from now on. The electrical tape, the old electrical tape, is actually going out as it has a tendency to melt during the summertime and actually make it so tips can be pulled off rather easily because the electrical tape actually melts pretty well. This method actually will keep that from happening during hot summers as well. Hot air gun. Some people have been known to use a torch. I tend to not want to use anything like that because I don't really want to burn or blacken any of this in any way. I just want to melt it down to my blade and my tip. And this one might seem strange, but when I get to doing the tip, I'll explain it to you. But this is a large fingernail clipper, and it's just one that I keep for snipping wires and trimming down electrical tape, and then these when I'm done applying them to my blade and my tip. So generally where I start is a clean blade. In this case, this blade's just been sitting around for a while, and it's just for the purpose of showing this video. When you do clean the blade, however, make sure that it's free of any kind of oil as well, or any extra sticky material that might be on the tip of the blade. Sometimes that can interfere with the process of getting this to adhere to the metal itself. So first things first, this is going to go on the blade. Then our tip. And I like to push it down enough to where I know it's secure, and you can give it a small tug and it won't pull. You want to make sure that tip is all the way down and that it's not going to create any kind of a gap or anything like that. This being a basic rapier blade, it is a little bit wider. The standard and the elite blades have a little bit more taper. The new tips that are being put out by Castile, these tips, they will fit on those by the number. So number 1 will fit on something with a very, very small taper. Number 2 will fit on a blade that has a taper similar to this. Number 3 has a wider profile for that, and number 4 is something for larger for two-handed weapons, long swords and things like sabers and things like that. In this case, we're just doing rapiers, and the tips 1 and 2 are the ones that we'd be using for just about every rapier blade that Castile would put out. You may or may not have to put a little tape if you're using a blade with a smaller taper. You may have to put a little tape around the tip before you put the rubber tip on there. It doesn't actually hurt anything. It just helps it to helps to secure it a little bit better, and it keeps it kind of from wobbling around. And again, you just push it down. And then we're going to fit the tape over this almost all the way up. And we want to keep that pretty close to the top because this will shrink when you get started. So I'm going to warm up this hot air gun and I'll shrink it down and I'll show you the finished product. So as I am heating it up, I'm actually turning the blade so it gets a good kind of solid melt all the way around, and you can see how that just really just adhered to the blade itself and to the rubber. So it's still a little warm right now to the touch. And what will happen here is that adhesive glue will grab onto the tip itself and the blade. And you can see I chose a 2-inch piece. You can actually do a 1-inch piece or a 1.5-inch piece if you also wanted to do that, just depending on how far down your blade you wanted to come. I did this 2-inch piece for the sake of that's what I had to show this. So for this part of it, like I said, it's still fairly warm. So at this point, it's still fairly warm, and it's up to you if you wanted it to cool down. I wouldn't suggest putting tape on it yet. I would wait till it's completely cool before you put tape on it. But remember I mentioned the clippers? So I'm going to trim these edges, and there's going to be a little bit that's going to come off, and I want those edges to be tapered. And those really kind of come off there. You can kind of see it's just snipping off. So you could use anything sharp if you wanted to. My preference is, I know, the nail clippers. I get it. It's strange, but it works. So I got a little bit of a taper on there, and I think you can kind of see that on the video. It'll make a difference when you put your tape on. So there's nothing really like a really hard kind of ledge or anything like that for another blade to catch or anything to really catch on it. It'll generally pretty well slide off. I'm actually going to do the same thing with the top of this right here too. And I did come down a little bit further than I wanted to, but for the purpose of showing you guys how I'm doing this, so I can actually get in there. And I might not have to with this one, since this one's a test one. I may not actually have to try and reach so far down in there, but if you wind up having a little bit of a ledge right here, you will need to trim that off because you'll get the same effect. You'll have a little bit of a ledge right there that you're going to want to take out. You are going to be covering this with tape anyway, so it will be kind of hidden as well. So that being said, that on that note, I'm actually using a contrasting heat shrink to the tip. So I have red heat shrink and a black tip, so they're contrasted. The tape that I'm also going to use is contrasted from the other two colors, so marshals and other fighters can pick out, if the tip would to come off or if it's tipped properly and that sort of thing. So this is pretty well cool at this point to the touch. It's still a little warm, so I'm going to keep going. I always start at the bottom. And the reason for that is because eventually your tape is actually going to start peeling right here. So it's going to peel off the blade a little bit and kind of peel up to where the heat shrink starts. And if I start at the bottom, I go up to the top and then I come back down, and I usually do about 3 passes. So 1, 2, 3. And I start at the bottom and end at the bottom. That's at least kind of the idea. And I usually start the tape about halfway. Halfway on the metal and then halfway on the heat shrink. And you just go. And it doesn't have to be super neat for the first pass or two. I would suggest that the first pass be decently tight. So when you get to the top, make another pass. and just go back down your tip. Sorry if I busted that out of camera view. I'm not trying to. And for my last pass, and it might end up a little bit sloppy, but that's pretty well not going to come off, and it's not going to come off for a long time. The method that I use to replace this, when I do need to replace these tips, I'm able to do this probably yearly. I have to actually cut all of this off. I've not seen one of these tips come off any other way than removing it with a sharp instrument. And when you do that, please be careful. Otherwise, that is how I tip those blades. And that's a pretty good test pull right there. And I'm going to tell you, it's not coming off. You may or may not have to replace the tape once in a while. Sometimes the tape will fray out on the bottom and it'll get dirty and things like that. Most of the time, I'm able to just like unwind the tape, peel it off. There's been a couple times where I had to cut the tape. I was really, really careful, but I can tell you that the heat shrink underneath is really tough stuff. So this is just one method that I've learned over the years for tipping a rapier blade. And this particular method I've become quite fond of. I've not had an issue yet with a tip coming off. I've been through several inspections. I've done several inspections on these types of tips. Tipped in this, or these types of blades tipped in this manner. The tips themselves, the rubber tips that are being printed by Cast Steel Armory, again, as I said in the video, I've grown quite fond of. They are very good tips. I'll be doing a review later on that you can find in this playlist for these tips. I'll leave a link in the video for where you can find the tips from Cast Steel. I'll also leave a link in the video for where you can get the 3/4 heat shrink, the marine grade heat shrink. And of course, the cloth tape can be attained just about any sporting goods store, Target, Walmart, those sorts of things. If you enjoyed this video, please like. If you enjoyed the channel, please subscribe, and we'll see you later.